Hello, my name is Tejvan Pettinger from Economics Help, and today I'd like to look at demand. So the law of demand states that as price rises, the quantity demanded will fall, and inversely, as price is cut, quantity demanded will increase. And why do we buy less as the price goes up? Well, there's two main reasons. Firstly, there's what we call the substitution effect, and this means that if coffee becomes more expensive, we may decide to buy an alternative like tea. Also, there's an income effect. If the price of Apple phones increases by 20%, then our disposable income will be lower because we spend more on the phones. And so therefore we can afford less of their products over time. Now, what factors affect demand apart from price? Because even if price stays the same, we can still see an increase in demand, a shift in demand to the right. So people can afford to buy more at the same price. So this could be for a few reasons. The first one, and most important perhaps, is income. If our incomes rise, we can afford to buy more apps on our phone. We can afford to go out to a restaurant more often in the evening. Also, just simply changes in tastes and fashion. So in recent years, it's become a lot more popular to spend a lot of money on mobile phones and apps. They've taken the place of cameras, which have seen a fall in demand because why buy a camera when you can get it on your phone? Also, it's important to see what's happening to the price of substitutes and complements. So if you are fed up with the price of Apple products keep going up, you may switch to the alternative Android phones where you think you get a better value. Also, complements are important. So for example, when buying a printer, it's not just the price of the printer that's important, but also the ink that goes in it, because firms often seek to make their profit from selling ink tied to the printer. So if a printer cuts the price of its ink, it may make it more attractive for consumers to buy that particular brand of a printer. Now, other factors that affect demand could be seasons, weather, advertising campaigns. So it also depends on the type of a product. So for example, when petrol goes up in price, the fall in demand is quite low because demand is, we say, is quite insensitive, inelastic to changes in price. Because if you need to get to work, you have to buy petrol, even if it becomes more expensive. But for something like Evian water, if the price goes up, there are many other alternative mineral waters which are very similar. So we're quite happy to buy less Evian and more of the alternatives. Now, are there any exceptions to the law of demand? Is it possible that price rises and demand rises? Well, they are very rare, and some of them are almost theoretical. First one is a giffen good, and this assumes that people are very poor and they have only two main goods that they buy. Let's say potatoes and meat. Potatoes are cheap, meat is expensive. But if this poor worker, poor peasant sees an increase in the price of potatoes, the income effect may mean they cannot afford to buy any meat anymore. So because they can't afford to buy any meat, they have to actually buy more potatoes. All their income goes on buying potatoes because it's more expensive. It's kind of counterintuitive a little bit, and it's very rare because it involves a very particular set of circumstances. But it is theoretically possible because there the income effect is very strong. Now also there's something called a Veblen good or ostentatious good, and this observes that when some goods increase in price, it can make it more attractive, more desirable. So for example, if designer clothes or art goes up in price, some people may think, well, that's more exclusive, I want to get it. So for an individual, their demand curve may slope upwards. When the price goes up, they want to buy more of it. However, if we look at the total market, it's unlikely this is the case because only a certain number of people will be able to afford these goods. So even though they're quite desirable, it's only a very small number who can afford to buy it. So demand is likely to just be very inelastic. Now, there's also a case that sometimes behavioral economics observes certain interesting features about consumer behavior. So if you go to a restaurant, it's often the case that consumers won't buy the cheapest wine on the menu, but they may buy the second cheapest wine because they think that they don't want to appear cheap and not valuing quality. So they kind of get the second cheapest wine, and this kind of makes it appear they're caring about quality but also getting good value for money. So if you increase the cheapest wine on the menu in price, you may actually see an increase in demand for that type of wine because it's then seen as more desirable because it's not the bottom basement cheapest wine on the menu. And I think there are a few goods like that. You know, when we looking to buy